Welcome, everyone, to the Voices of a Black Man. My name is CK James, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with none other than Mr. Jay Graves. The Voices of Black Men is a platform for Black men to be seen and heard, for viewers to be able to listen to their stories, to look and see biases that they may have not thought they had, and to hear stories through different lenses than maybe they grew up with. So I have Jay Graves here today to tell his story. How are you doing, Jay?
I'm doing good, CK. How are you?
I am doing well. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's see where this takes us.
All right. I'm excited about today.
Me
So,
too.
thank you for being here. And I'm just going to dive right in.
Sounds
So,
good.
tell us about young Jay. Where is he from? How did he grow up?
Yeah. Young Jay, I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, to an interracial family. So my mom's white, my dad's black, and I have a younger sister. She's like a best friend to me. So we're very close. We're not the typical kind of sibling that you might have. Yeah, I had a growing up interracial in the South. It was certainly had its challenges. I did face a lot of racism even as a very young child, not only within my family but within the community and my interactions. And we'll probably get into some of that in our conversation. But my family is a very close family, very tight knit. No matter what was happening with us, we always stayed very, very close and supportive of each other. I was typical kid. I got in trouble. I was a class clown. But I eventually matured, made my way to NC State, where I got my undergrad degree. Decided that I wanted to join the military while I was in college, so I took a little bit of time to do that. Went back in the military after I graduated college, and great opportunity to live all over the world. Lived in different cultures, and eventually left the military. I actually was diagnosed with diabetes, so I needed to leave. Jumped headfirst actually into the diabetes industry with a company called Roche, very large biotech company. Started off as a sales rep and worked my way up to vice president of sales for North America, and eventually decided that I wanted to do my own thing. So we were in Indianapolis with that. At the headquarters, decided that I wanted to start my own company. I wanted to start something in leadership consulting as well as with diversity and inclusion. So I started Pathfinder Business Consultants to do that. Moved back to the Raleigh area to be closer to family and friends, and just come back home for after all those years. And so here I am. We've been here for a little over a year and a half. I'm with my beautiful wife, Charla, and my daughter, Jordan, and my two crazy dogs here. And honestly, I just try to live every day as the best father and husband and friend that I can be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for your service.
Oh, my pleasure to serve.
And what branch did you serve in?
I was in the Army.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for your service. I'm a military brat, so trust me, I understand that freedom is not free.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
definitely thank you. Thank you. I want to go back. I want to go back to young Jay. I want to go back to Greensboro, North Carolina.
Sure.
You've given us a lot right there, and I want to digest it just a little bit if we can.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, did you grow up in a predominantly mixed neighborhood, African American neighborhood? What was it?
It was predominantly mixed. The areas that we were in, had all different backgrounds: Hispanic, Black, white. So it was a very mixed environment. I would say more white than anything when it got to high school, but still very diverse growing up.
And you did public school all the way, or did you have any private schooling?
No, we were a tight family. We were pretty poor, so it was public school. We actually, I guess just to give you a little bit of dynamic about my family, we were actually homeless for a time, and we lived in a campground. And during that time, you'd think most families would implode, but my mom made sure that we were having a great time, that we were out camping. My sister and I had a great time. My dad, I think he was working 2, maybe 3 jobs at the time to help pull us out of our situation. So yeah, we were tight, but we moved around a lot. I think I counted one time that we moved about 18 times before I was 18. So we were all over town, and sometimes it would be in maybe a predominantly Black area of town, and then sometimes it would be in a more of a diverse part of town. But the high school that I went to, incredibly diverse high school.
Academic wise or sports wise, where did you sit between the two?
Well, I am a terrible athlete. I like to play sports, but I am horrible at it. We couldn't afford insurance, so I wasn't able to play sports in high school or junior high. Academics, I mean, this is, I'll go ahead and embarrass myself because hopefully this provides hope for people. I actually didn't know what a GPA was until my junior year. I was the first person in my family to go to college. So I just, my parents wanted me to do better, but I just didn't grow up in an environment where, say my daughter today, right? I got college stuff all back here. She's been to games since she was, 6 months old. I didn't really grow up in that environment. And so it took some mentors, my counselor, I had a couple of teachers. Actually, my girlfriend's dad was a big influence. And there was a program that for kind of not at-risk youth, but kids that showed promise, but they knew that they weren't exposed to college. I was in that program. And so through those influences, I ended up saying, all right, I'm going to go to college. This is fun. This is going to help me advance myself. So, but until then, I actually had I think it was like a 2.2 GPA. I mean, it was, it was bad. When I ended up going to grad school a few years ago, I wrote a little essay as to why it was so bad and what I've done in my life since. So.
Thank you for sharing. So somebody can definitely get hope from that. It doesn't matter where you start out. It's kind of where you decide to go, right, in life.
Yeah, and look for those mentors, right? I mean, the people that were there to help me, navigate new waters is very important.
When you look, being where you are today and looking back, what will you say are some of the pivotal moments in your life?
Wow. I mentioned one, and that would be family in general, but that time that we were homeless is something that I look at today and I think, gosh, you can make it through anything. And even if you're facing those tough times, as long as you stick together, then that's something that I've carried with me all my life. Particularly when I started my business. I mean, I came from a phenomenal career. Money wasn't an issue, career trajectory was great. And then saying, you know what, I'm going to go start my own company and, start from scratch. Big risk, right? Took a lot. But I looked at my family and I was like, no matter what happens, we can survive it. Right. So that's something I kind of took from there. Just facing a lot of the adversity that I've faced growing up has really shaped my life. And being comfortable with my own skin, for many years, that really was a weight on my shoulders. Some of the experiences that I had growing up, particularly when it came to race, it hurt my confidence. It's something that kind of stuck in the back of my head. And there was a time when I just decided no more. And that was a pivotal time in my life where I was like, I'm Jay, I'm who I am. Yeah. This is how I look. You can take it or not, but this is who I am. And this is what I've done. And that was a pivotal time in my life as well. Yeah. So some key points.
Yeah. So I've got to ask this question. It's a question that we ask every guest that we have. When did you realize that you weren't a young man, but a Black young man? And what did that mean to you?
Well, I wasn't a man yet, and forgive me, but I'm gonna be be blunt here. The
Please.
first time I heard I was ever called a nigger that I can remember was in the second grade.
Mm.
And it was because growing up in the 70s, interracial wasn't cool. And neither side really accepted me, right? If I was, I was a person of color, with a lot of white friends and their parents. And I wasn't black, with my black friends. So I kind of had this crazy identity. I didn't know where I stood. But the first time I was ever called a nigger was in second grade. And it was because somebody was talking about my parents being illegal. And, I remember just getting really upset and the name started flying. And the interesting thing about it is the teacher at the time kind of pulled us apart and didn't admonish. I was admonished,
Really?
not the other person. So that's the first thing that stuck out in my head. And probably about the same age, I was, my mom's side of the family is from Indiana, and we were up visiting. And I was a Cub Scout at the time, and I was playing in the front yard, and this group of Cub Scouts comes walking by, and I stand up and I'm like, I don't know, I can't even remember the symbol, but I'm like, hey, Cub Scout, I'm a Cub Scout. And they started throwing rocks at me, calling me a nigger. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, oh, we wear the same uniform, right? It's got the American flag on it. My granddad came out and shooed him off, and it really upset him and the family. But I wasn't a man yet before I realized that I'm considered different. And I'm considered different just because of something because of the color of my skin. So that early on. And I think, as I was going back to what I was saying earlier, I did have a point where I kind of had an awakening, and it would have been really probably early college. Because I was still dealing with a lot through high school. I mean, a lot. I was dating somebody at the time, and I overheard her mom say, you're not going to have nigger babies like with this kid. We got laughed at one trip to Carolina Beach, for being interracial. I mean, stuff was still happening in the high school age, but in college is when people started to open up. And, we were putting dorms together, and we were putting suites together, and people were having very open conversation. And that's when I really started to embrace and say, I'm proud of myself, first of all, for even being able to sit in this dorm for where I came from. And second of all, I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my skin. And it's my job to share and teach. And people were willing to listen then. And I saw people's lives change. People that would say, like, I've never been this close to a black person before, Jay, like, you're really cool. Like, people started to open up, and I'm like, that's great. And some of these folks I'm still friends with to this day, and we still have conversations. So that's when I would say I realized that I was a black man, and I had a comfort and confidence in that.
Now, you talked about people saying that your parents were illegal. Were they illegal?
No, they weren't illegal. But
there was a time when the law was.
Yeah. But there was a lot of history with that, right? I mean, that wasn't the first time that I had heard that. I mean, I heard that for years when I was younger. Your parents are illegal. Your parents are illegal. So, yeah, it wasn't the first time. Luckily, they're legal now. All right, I think we're back. Just waiting for CK here to ask questions. So everybody hang tight here. So I'm getting a bunch of text messages, people saying that I'm the only one on the screen right now, which is, I am so sorry, people. You got to look at all this right now by myself. Good friend of mine just said, tell a joke. It's just not going to happen. We did talk about, CK and I did talk about if something happened, just to keep rolling, you know, and I want to say that, you know, what she's doing is amazing. There was somebody that I saw in one of her interviews the other day that really inspired me to reach out to her, not even to see if I could be on this, but just to say thank you. I didn't realize it, but she actually runs a financial business, and this isn't what she does as her day job. I thought she was another diversity coach. And so when we did kind of this discovery call, you know, I said, well, how long have you been doing diversity? And she was like, oh, I haven't. But she was just so taken aback by what's going on in our country right now. And the fact that we're bombarded with images, and a lot of times negative images of Black men. And so that inspired her to start this program to give us a platform to be able to speak and to be able to share our stories. So, hey, CK, you're back. I was just giving a little bit of background. I was just giving a little background on this program, and
keep going.
Yeah, okay, I got this. But yeah, I was just saying how, you know, I was astounded when I found out that this isn't your day job. That I thought that you were a diversity coach. That I thought, you know, this was what you did. I was like, no, she owns her own financial advisory company, and just was inspired to do this. And around these negative images we're bombarded with, right? I mean, you know, constantly the media. I can't even watch the news anymore because of what you're seeing, and just how much I appreciated what you're doing. And then honestly, just frankly, I didn't say it at the beginning, but just the honor it is to be on here, to be able to be a part of what you've decided to do with your free time and to help tell stories. So that was it. I said, you know, people were sending me text messages telling me to tell jokes, but I didn't go there, CK. I didn't do it.
Well, you know, I always say to our audience, we are live. So anything is subject to having we're live. And I'm actually on my phone because the computer just decided that it's not getting back on the internet for whatever reason. We were talking good stuff, and you know how the things happen when you start talking good stuff.
That's right.
But I thank you. Thank you for continuing to talk and talk a little bit about what we're doing here. And it's the total reason why we wanted to have you on today, right? Just in our background conversations of stories are important to understand where people come from, understand we don't know anything different until we hear something different.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's hopefully a lot of people know me. People trust me. When things started first happening, you know, with the racial inequality, people picked up the phone and called, and I was really honored and humbled by that, because they knew that, that I would shoot them straight. Like, you know, I don't understand what's going on, was a lot of people were saying, but I want to understand. And a lot of them, even though they knew me, didn't know some of the stuff we just talked about in my childhood, right? Like, you know, getting rocks thrown at me in the second grade because of what I look like, you know? And so, you know, I'm hoping that kind of wakes people up, right? You know, that they do come to like these trusted sources, and they do, you know, go to your website, and they do listen to the stories of people, because maybe then it helps people understand why we're upset, why people are taken to the streets. Now, I don't condone the riots by any means. I really don't. My daughter, she, you know, when the BLM march happened here in Raleigh, came to me and said, you know, I'd really like to go. And at first I was like, I don't, it could be dangerous. I don't want to take you there. You know, I've been in combat. Like, I don't want, I don't want you anywhere near anything like that. And she was like, but I got to speak up, Dad. And that really inspired me right there. I was like, that's right. We do have a job. So, I do participate in we did participate in that. And I am all for, the nonviolent solidarity and speaking out. And some people wonder why. And I'm hoping that through telling these stories, people understand that, for somebody like me, when you see some of the things that are happening and some things that are happening in the community, all the emotions from second grade on, like, well up inside you. And, for me, it does manifest as anger at first. I want to throw rocks back as my first instinct, but then I tamp that down and say, that doesn't get you anywhere. So let's tell our story, and hopefully people are listening with open ears. Hopefully people say, this is a credible person that I know personally. And if they're hurting right now, then maybe I can take a step back and understand why a vast majority is hurting, of the community is hurting. And let's figure out how to move forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely, 100%. I just need to take you around with me as I'm talking to people about this project. Jay, I'm taking
no problem. Let's do it.
But now I want to make sure we get back to your story as we talk about this. But that all was a piece of your story, right? All of that is what you feel inside of here. For me, it is, you talked about growing up biracial.
Mm-hmm.
But you identify with being a Black man.
Yes.
So when we talk about that, because this is a different place now, this is a whole different place. And you talked about it earlier, where you kind of sit in between two worlds, so to speak. So do you mind delving into that a little bit and just telling us kind of what is that like growing up sitting in, because I think as an adult, it's maybe a little bit different, right? Because you kind of came into, this is who I am, that's it. But growing up, sitting into those two worlds, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I guess one piece of context too is not only am I from an interracial relationship, but I'm in an interracial marriage now. So my wife is white, and my daughter a couple of years ago, she came out. So, we've got all kinds of diversity in our family that we just embrace and love. But it was I guess growing up, it was really confusing growing up because, like I said, you weren't really accepted on either side, and not wholesale, right? I'm not making blanket statements here, but, I had some friends and their parents who just accepted me for who I was. And I didn't feel like I'm in a White House and I'm a person of color. Like, I didn't even feel it, didn't even think it. I mean, there's definitely a large segment of that in my life. And to this day, I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'm not sitting around thinking, I'm, a person of color in this situation. I just am, I exist. Right. But it was tough growing up. I mean, because, I did feel like, the technical term is covering, right? So if people ever look up what covering is, it's kind of adapting your style to the environment that you're in when it comes to a lot of times, race. And so, I would act, one way in one environment and try to act the other way in the other environment. And both was so awkward for me because it wasn't genuine. I wasn't just being myself. And so not only growing up with all the other craziness of growing up as a young boy, right? The hormones and the this and the that in school and relationships and everything else, I was also trying to figure out just my identity. So I didn't feel uncomfortable just sitting with people. So that was probably the toughest challenge for me, interracial. And then, you get stared at all the time. And we actually do deal with that to this day. That is something that just continues to just annoy me. If I'm out, particularly with my daughter, people will look at us. And matter of fact, we're just in Ohio, about a month or so ago, and her and I went to the Walmart. We were in a little town, and pretty much the only person of color in there. And she started saying, "Hey, let's just wrap this up and get going." And she was starting to rush me, and I was like, "Well, what, what's going on? Are you all right?" And she was like, "I'm just so sick of the people staring at us, Dad. I'm just ready to get back home." And so, to this day, we deal with it. It's still prominent, but the difference being is that I'm comfortable with who I am. As a child, that was really tough, and I was trying to fit in. So I was probably overdoing it because it was incredibly awkward for me. And all I wanted to do was just be accepted, just for being Jay.
Yeah. When you walk in a room, what do you want people to say or think about you?
That's a great guy. He's a great father. He's a great husband. He's a great friend. He's a positive person. Those that know me, I do have a big sense of humor. That's why everybody was texting saying you should tell jokes, because I have a pretty big sense of humor. Interestingly enough, my humor does go back to being a defensive mechanism. I found that it was easier to deflect when people were being hostile towards me, particularly when it came to race, to deflect it. So if you look at the movie Blazing Saddles, right, like everybody gets picked on in that movie, and nobody walks away offended, because you're like picking on the most ridiculous things. You're like calling out the ridiculousness of racism, right? And so that actually is what spawned a lot of my humor early on, was defensive, and then I'm sure it was part of the personality too. But I, hopefully people just say that, I brightened their day. I brought something to them, and I'm all about other people. I mean, that's just who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So now let's talk about your parents a little bit, and just growing up with them, being that they're an interracial couple in the South, and dealing with their families. Did their family accept them or no?
Oh, no. On my dad's side, yes. On my mom's side, absolutely not. That environment, I remember my mom saying that, I think it was my great grandfather was in the Klan, like in the leadership in the Klan. So my grandfather grew up in an environment, right, where, Midwest, hadn't seen Black people growing up, had that influence going on. And he told me years later, and I actually wrote an article about this, that all he knew about Black people growing up was what he heard from other people and what he saw on TV, right? He saw blackface, where they were wanting to rape white women. And that was what they showed in the movies, is Black men just were raving for white women. And then when he was in the Navy in World War II, he was told they're inferior, they're going to be cooking the food, they can't come anywhere close to a gun. He was a radar tech, and he told me they weren't allowed anywhere near the equipment because they were stupid. And so, that is the environment that he came in. Oh, and then he also referred to, later on in the 60s, all he saw on TV, and I think there's a lot of correlations to this today, all he saw were riots. He's like, these Black people burning down their own neighborhoods, they're stupid. And so, when my parents got married, mom was pretty much disowned. Again, that kind of went back to we have to be our own tight little family. Now, he grew out of that, which is part of what that article is about, is about how your surroundings shape you, and how that creates these unconscious biases, but that you can grow out of them by being exposed to different things. Talks like this being one of them. So when I was born, not to say it was my fault, but my grandmother said I refused to not see my grandbaby. And she was going to get in the car and drive down here. And of course, that day and age, man wouldn't allow that to happen. So, so he came down, and that started I'd say the exposure process, and then the healing process and the growth process there, to the point where, I think I was around 12 when he told me the story, and he just sat down and he was in tears the whole time. And he was telling me about his upbringing, why he had the racist kind of ideals first time he saw me as a little baby, he said his first concern was people are going to treat him the way I've been treating your dad. And that's when he really lost it. I mean, that chokes me up a little bit. You know, he knew that society was going to make it hard for me because he came from that part of the society that made it hard for Black people and interracial people. So half-breeds, right? I mean, I was called zebra and half-breed, like, for years. So, you know, that, I guess kind of going to that started that healing process. And so for all my life, knowing my grandfather and that side of the family, I didn't experience it directly. I mean, he came to my rescue when those Cub Scouts were throwing rocks at me, right? So it wasn't until he really told my story. And of course I heard from my own family, like, you know, what they went through. But it was when he told his own story to me that I realized the extent of how bad things were early on. And he's still with us to this day. And, you know, and I mean, he's a hero because he made that change after so many years being indoctrinated in that environment. And that's honestly what I hope happens, you know, during these times now, that people look beyond what's going on and they ask, what's the root cause behind people's anger? And understand the why, and then figure out what can we do, just like he did.
Yeah, absolutely. You wrote an article that kind of paid homage to him.
I sure did. Yeah. It's called "My Grandfather's a Racist." You know, it's in your face, and people, you know, it's the first time I ever wrote like an article and published it on LinkedIn. I didn't know what would happen. It's got over 50,000 views. A couple of companies have made it mandatory reading within their diversity groups. And I can't count the amount of people that have just sent me messages through LinkedIn, just thanking me for the article, because it really does. And if you look at the comments behind it, it really does show that people can change, and people are seeking change right now. And people are saying that they looked at their own biases after reading that article and realized that, you know, they have some. You know, I've had some people say, I have some versus Latinos. I have a stereotype of Asian. I have a stereotype of Black people. And wow, I really, you know, I read this and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm racist, you know, but hey, that's okay. We can change. Like, I have my own biases that I deal with all the time. That's actually my next article that I'm coming out is going to be pointing the finger at me and experiences that I've had and where I've had to change and be open-minded and follow my own advice.
Yeah, you know, when you talk about the article that you have coming out and talking about you and your own biases, would you say the experiences that you've had throughout your life have hardened you in certain places? Oh
yeah. And that is where your biases come from, right? A lot of times it'll be either your own personal experiences or what you're told. And so yes, I mean, I've certainly gotten hardened to certain things. You know, yeah, I mean, you know, second grade, you know, being called a nigger, you know, I didn't even know how to react. Yeah, don't say that to me now. Okay. But I am hardened to seeing certain things. And one of the interesting things about being interracial and being somebody that builds trust with people easily is that sometimes people will drop their guard. And, you know, I would be sitting around what I would think would be, you know, a group of friends, and all of a sudden somebody starts going off on like a racist tirade. And I'm like, I'm sitting right here, man, you know? And I guess I kind of got it. I don't know if I'd call it hardened to that, but I will speak up now. You know, it used to be that I would just kind of let it go. Like I said, you know, covering, and I would just kind of like, okay, you know, there's so many instances of that happening. And I think my wife might be watching. And I mean, we went to go visit one of her good friends, and the husband was sitting there, and I had never met them before. So it was already that awkward. Like, I don't really know these people, but I think we were sitting over dinner or something. And all of a sudden he just, you know, nigger. And I'm like, it was like a record player stopping in the house. And we were like, That was probably the last time that I would have not said something. I think it was just because it took me aback. I'm with my wife. It had not happened in a long time, but I don't want to allow that to happen today. I mean, part of what I want to be able to do with people is, you know, everybody talks about anti-racist now, right? You know, is I want people to understand that, you know, why people are hurting, and that, you know, it's years and years and years of experiences welling up. And what, you know, people say, what can I do? Be an anti-racist. If you hear some of that crap, like, step up and speak up for me, speak up for people like me, and say, I won't tolerate that. Doesn't matter if it's a family member, if it's a good friend, and then teach them. Hell, connect them with me. I'll talk to them, you know? I mean, so yeah, that's.
You know, I have a philosophy that I learned very early on. It's something that my mom taught me. And it was, if you meet people at the human level first,
That's
you
right.
can always find commonalities rather than just looking at differences, because we have more in common than we have different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you found that to be true throughout your life?
Absolutely. I mean, the two areas that I would say that foster that would be sports and the military. So not to say that there isn't racism in there, right? I mean, you still have society's population, but, and I said I was a bad athlete, so I'm not going to speak to sports. It's just, I know I've talked to a lot of people in sports, and it's very much team oriented, like the military. But when I got into the military, there is a lot of, I mean, there's lowbrow jokes. There's, you know, but there's not the vehemence behind it. It's more of that, like I said, that blazing saddles, like, this is ridiculous. Like, we're just going to make fun of each other kind of thing. But, you know, when somebody is hurting, or you have to accomplish a mission, you have massive amounts of responsibility, then you start to see people for just being people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you are injured, right, and a Black medic comes to save your life, I mean, they're going to come save your life and vice versa, right? I mean, so skin doesn't matter then. You know, your skin tone doesn't matter then. It's the role. It's your brother. It's your sister on the line, and you have a duty to each other in a mission. So that's where I would say I really seen that in action, to where you're a human being, human being first. And then even outside of that, I have so many friends that they don't see me as a person of color, and they never ever did. And I could tell from the beginning, they're just dear friends, and that's what they see me as. So, but they're meeting you on that human level. They like you for you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that the issue with society right now is more fear of the unknown?
Definitely. And fear of change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting when I was at Roche, I was really surprised, you know, being a veteran and a person of color. When I went to the headquarters, the first thing I thought was, oh, they're going to have diversity groups. And I was really excited more for the veteran one, because I miss the military every day, you know, and the camaraderie and, you know, the team orientation. And when I first got there, there were no groups at all. So then they started a women's initiative to get women into executive roles, which I leaned right into. Like, I was like, I'm all in. I understand how this is powerful. Interesting enough, I volunteered to be on one of the committees. I was told I couldn't because I was a man, and I was like, whoa, we're doing this wrong. So that was a lesson that I took with me now when I do diversity work, that no, you need advocates from all over. If people say they want to jump in, you let them jump in. You know, we're a community here. But yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, go back to your question again. I got off track there for a second.
No, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. It sparked another question, but we'll finish this one first.
Okay.
I talked about, was it fear in society? And you said it was fear and change.
Yes, fear. Okay, so at that meeting, though, they brought everybody together, and they had people sitting on stage, and they said, we're going to start this initiative, and we're going to look to get X amount of women in leadership roles, and here's the business case behind it. And I was sitting next to a colleague of mine that was a peer. We were both directors. And he was a white guy. And he said, this is, effed up. This is so stupid. I was like, why? And I said, look at the stage. They're all white guys on the stage saying that they're going to do this. And he said, well, the day of the white man's over. His attitude went down from there, and he was eventually let go. And I talked to him a lot about it, and I would say that's not the case. It's not the case, but we need equity. We need diversity. We need opportunity. And women make companies better, right? Like, we need to do this. And, but it's still competitive. Like, if you're still the best of the best, then you'll earn your spot. But there was a lot of fear coming out of that meeting, and fear of the unknown, and self-preservation, frankly. So I think when we see, not to get political, but you start to see, like the recent VP pick, right? Obama, you start to see other groups starting to come forward in positions of power. Some people are going to be fearful of that. One of the things I'm researching now is for a future article, is a stat that I saw that 68% of CEOs are white males, 2% are black males, 1% are black women. I mean, that's a huge gap. And there's a couple things there. One, we need advocates out of that 68% of white male CEOs. You got to have advocates. You got to have supporters. And they're the ones that can really make change. So looking at their pipeline, who are they grooming? Who are the people they're mentoring? Are they being diverse in that effort, right? And then we have to figure out, how can we unlock some of the voices of those CEOs that have made it, right? Can they mentor? Can they bring people along? But as I looked at that stat, I saw it was pretty shocking to me to see those numbers. And I started thinking through, there's going to be a lot of fear as that 68%, and whatever percentage of that is, that starts to groom people of color and women in their pipeline to take over their roles. There's going to be a lot of fear there for people, but it's the only way we're going to be able to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. You sparked two questions for me, but I'm going to go back a little bit and then come forward. You talk about, just because of our previous conversation, and just looking at history in general.
Yeah.
And how America was kind of founded, what's happened since then, slavery, systematic and systemic policies and rules and different things that have been put in place throughout the years, yeah. Which goes back to, I think, what you talked about. And if you disagree, please tell me, but all of that kind of also goes back to knowing what I just knew, or growing up kind of in what I already knew type thing. Mm-hmm. To a point where somebody has to say, wait a minute, this has to change. This needs to be a little bit different. Yeah. So how does that person stand up and start doing that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've come a long way, and I do want to acknowledge that, to where we've made some great strides as a country, and I'm patriotic, and I'm proud to be an American. Also, I'm quick to acknowledge we have a long way to go. And, my dad couldn't drink out of the same fountain as a white person. That's not that far back. I mean, it feels like it wasn't that far back when I was dealing with what I was dealing with in high school and as a second grader and all of that, right? So, I think first and foremost, people have to acknowledge it and accept it, all people. So there was an analogy, and I wish I could remember her name, but she gives an analogy of playing Monopoly, and imagining playing Monopoly, and letting somebody have like 300 turns. And they're buying up the best property, and they're building out, and they're doing all this stuff. And then they say, okay, you can go now, and that's the black people that can go now. And you start to go around and the whole point was to say, this is kind of what it's like. People will say very, very quickly, you have all the same rights and everything else as I do. What's the problem? Well, sure. And, you know, you can look at me and say, I've taken full advantage of those. I've been to college. I've got my MBA. I was an officer in the military. I'm a CEO in my own company. I mean, you know, so yes, they're out there, but you know, there have been some headwinds there that people, you know, there've been some headwinds there that I have to pay honor to my dad and my grandfather, and you know, that have paved the way. What I like to say is take that Monopoly game a step further. There's a couple of places that were, you know, are on the board there that are nice property, right? Black person lands on it, they start buying it, they start building it, and then somebody comes into the game and burns it down. That's Tulsa, right? That's Black Wall Street. That's where people started to create, you know, Black communities started to create wealth. So now it's not only the 400 and some whatever, or 200 and some, you know, laps around. It's we start making laps and people start burning it down. People start hanging you from trees. People start, okay, so that changes the game too. And then they say separate but equal. Well, is it really? No, it's absolutely not. So, I mean, there are other variables that happen during that game. And if you really want to look at it, that game didn't truly start, you know, to where we're past all that until after Jim Crow was gone. And even then there's going to be certain communities, right? But, you know, when I look at history, that's kind of the point where you could say we're all on the board and we're all running. So that's kind of the way I look at the world when people say we're all equal. Sure, just open your eyes though and think about the starting point. Think about the times when the community tried to make a step ahead and what happened to those communities, where those communities were placed. You know, people will talk about Chicago. What I would ask in all these situations is look at the root cause. You know, why are so many Black people in ghettos? Why are so many Black people in prison? Why, you know, I mean, if you start to peel the onion back and you start to look at depression and drugs and lack of opportunity and everything else, then you can peel the onion back and you can start to find out, yeah, society shaped that. Now we have to deal with it. And dealing with it isn't, you know, just some of the comments that I see on Facebook and social media, right? Like those people type comments and blah, blah, blah. It's open your eyes, open your mind, open your heart, and then do something. There's been several times recently where people have posted stuff about, you know, people kneeling, right, during the anthem. And you know, I guess I just happen to be in the camp that says, you know, everybody assumes every veteran's offended by that. Well, I actually know many that aren't. I personally say I fought for your right to be able to kneel. I fought for your right to be able to protest. It's a nonviolent protest. Heck, you know, people were complaining about that. Then they were complaining about violent protests. So what do you want? You know, I mean, what do you want? But, you know, with that, what I've been saying to people and kind of going back to, I think your comment about what people do is stop getting hung up on the fact that somebody's kneeling. Okay. If that offends you personally, got it. Okay. That's your right. And that's your right to boycott sports. However, take a step back and understand why are they kneeling? Right. And I've asked that to people and they'll say, oh, because this player got benched. No. Okay. Whatever. Whole communities are kneeling. Police are kneeling, you know, pastors are kneeling, you know, I mean, so just take a step back and get to the why is what I like to tell people. Mm-hmm. And if you have kind of that EQ to really just think through it, be open-minded about it, accept it, and then I think you can make change. You may not even have to agree with it. There are things that I see that I don't agree with, but I always try to go to the root cause of it. And then I try to have that empathy and understanding, and then I figure out what am I going to do. So some people that have complained, I've told them, I'm a part of a wonderful group. It's a volunteer group called SCORE. A small subgroup of us have started a business plan program at Shaw, and we wanted to get to other HBCUs. Hey, we're looking for volunteers, right? So get off Facebook, stop being a Facebook warrior, and come march with me. Come volunteer to teach young Black people and people of color and minorities and women how to build businesses, how to build wealth. So kind of long-winded, but I think open-mindedness, and then if you can get yourself there, lean in and do something. Stop complaining.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I said earlier when you talked about serving, I said, thank you for serving. Freedom's not free, you know, and I think that that's what, as a soldier, as an officer, you understand that more than anybody else. And I think a lot of times we don't, if you're not connected. I didn't know, coming from a military world, I didn't know that anyone didn't know about the military till I got married. My husband was come from a farming family. They had no idea about military.
Yeah.
And so it was a different lens, right? For him, and a different lens for me, in the same way as we talk about race, of just where you grow up, what you know, what you experience, all of those things are changing. So thank you. Definitely thank you for that. This has been amazing. We're not finished yet. I'm not letting you go quite yet, because this is good conversation. This is good stuff. Now, I really want to know, I'm curious, as a man first, then a Black man who decided to get married and have kids, to have a family, what, at that point where you decided to say, okay, it's time for this, what responsibility or what was going through your mind to say, I want to marry this woman and we're going to have a family and we're going to live a life and that type of thing?
Well,
get you some brownie points here. Let's see. If you answer this right, you might get brownie points. No?
Brownie points. Oh, well, what I would say is first and foremost, you know, my wife and I were really good friends. We were two people that weren't looking for a relationship. We had actually gotten to the point in our career and age where we were like, you know, whatever. And we just started palling around, and one thing led to another. And I remember, oh Lord, she used to haul me all over looking at furniture and other stuff that I wasn't really into, but you know, I enjoyed her company. And I remember coming home from a trip one time and pulling off on the side of the road and calling my dad and saying, you know, Dad, how do you know, like, when you're like really, really in love? Like, you're like, I think this is the one. You know, so we knew from early on, and we made some sacrifices to be together. Because I'd actually gotten my dream job to be stationed where I'd always wanted to be stationed in the unit. I always wanted to be stationed at. And she had a job at a unit or in El Paso, which most people aren't raising their hand and volunteering to go be stationed in El Paso. And I made the decision to forego my my dream job to be with her in El Paso, but it didn't even feel like a sacrifice, you know.
That's love.
We were all in, you know. We were all in. And then, you know, we talked about having kids. But really, it was when I came back from combat I think I was actually in combat, you know, combat theater, and I was like, man, she was also deployed in a dangerous area at the same time, and we were just kind of like, man, if we survive and we come back, we need to have a family. And my daughter is actually named after the country of Jordan, because that's where I was when we had that conversation. And it's a beautiful country too, so it just kind of stuck. But from a responsibility standpoint, you know, it was just, I think like every parent, you know, you want your child to have better opportunities than you had, to be in a better world. To do everything that you can to do that. And, you know, I'm pretty blessed. My daughter's, she's like my buddy. Like, if you see us, we're always palling around, and, you know, she probably gets embarrassed, but I'm always putting stories, sometimes on LinkedIn, like, cause she teaches me lessons, right? You know, I got this whiteboard here where I'm workaholic, I'm working, and she came in here and wrote, you know, blink twice for help, you know, like I'm in a hostage crisis, right? You know, I ended up putting that picture on LinkedIn, and like thousands and thousands of people looked at it and shared it. They're like, that's a life lesson, So we're great for each other in a good balance. So I just think as a man and as a father and a person, it's just doing everything I can to make sure that I leave a positive legacy, for my family and those around me. Just try to be the best I can and have a better launching board for her, and then the next generation and the next generation.
As we talk about your daughter, Miss Jordan.
Yeah.
I know she's cringing right now if she's watching. Hopes and fears for her.
Wow. So, a lot of people, and I teach, generations in the workplace and generations when it comes to diversity, and there's always that, that generation, we're all guilty of it, right? But there is something really special about her generation. And I actually think the ones before, each one tolerates less and less of this BS. And when I watch her and her friends, they're all really open-minded, and so from a hopes perspective, I hope they continue to carry that torch. I hope that we make a lot of progress in our generation. We're the ones that are coming up for the presidencies and everything else, right? So, hopefully we're able to advance this. But I guess my hope would be that she's not having to deal with a lot of this stuff as she's growing up. Like I said, she came out. So she couldn't do that when we lived in Indiana, because Indiana has still got some issues. And at the time we were living there, they were actually passing laws saying that if you identify as being gay, they do not have to serve you. Which for me brought back stories of my dad, right? Like, hey, black man eating the back alley, times in the military where unfortunately I lost one in particular, a great soldier and leader, because somebody got mad, knew he was gay, called him out. So, my hope would be that she doesn't have to deal with that. The challenge is, the reality is, right now, she's going to have to deal with the same stuff I grew up with. And that makes me want to be very protective, makes me want to fight, and it makes me want to lean into what I do when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
Yeah. She sounds awesome.
Oh, she's amazing. I'm surprised I don't hear footsteps coming up the stairs either. Set me up. I don't know what I'm going to run into when I open this door.
She knows you're live, so she doesn't want to be seen. So we're going to move on. We're going to move on.
That's right. I'll lock the door.
That's it. So she'll get you later, I'm sure. I'm sure that. So as you move forward, what's next for Jay?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm just going to continue to carry the torch. I know that we have a panel that you bring together on Saturday. Immediately after that, I've got another podcast that I'm have been invited to. It's about spreading positivity. It's sponsored by IBM, and it's global, and they're wanting to tell global stories of how we can change and be positive, and what can people do to jump on board. So I'm all in. This is what I do. This is what, if you, not putting a plug in, but if you go to my website, Pathfinder Business Consultants, it's my passions are leadership and it's diversity and inclusion, and that's what we do. And so the future for me is to just continue to carry the torch. I'm not perfect. I'm going to say things that are wrong. I'm going to be a hypocrite sometimes, and I'm going to make mistakes, but my heart is always in the right place. My intent is always in the right place. And I'm just going to continue to be the best that I can be and try to leave a strong legacy, not only for my family, but, for the community.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, you hit on something right there, and that was not perfect. That sometimes um, you're going to be hypocritical. Sometimes you're going to not say the right thing. Sometimes, you know, just things are going to happen. But I don't point that out for you. I'm really wanting to point that out for society as we look towards change.
Yeah.
Those things are going to happen. We're not asking anyone to be perfect, right? We're not asking anyone to do the right thing and always say the right thing, because sometimes you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you know, I mean, we're emotional beings, right? I mean, you know, you know, I've got some experience with behavior science, and you know, people think with that lizard brain, you know, first. I mean, we react, right? And so it's okay. I mean, you know, when I talked about my own unconscious bias, you know, it's these, I have biases. I can't help it, you know, but what I do is after I've done something and that flag goes up saying, hey, you know, that wasn't right. I analyze it and say, man, where did that come from, and why, and then address it. But yeah, I mean, we can't be perfect, and you know, if we're going to move together as a society, one thing I will say is that it really seems like, and I can't really put a finger on when it happened, but it seems like it's become more popular to pull each other down. I can't watch the news anymore because it's just like one station trying to belittle another. I watch global news, you know, when I want to see what's going on, or, you know, what I tell a lot of people is go to the source. You know, you don't believe what's happening with the pandemic, talk to your doctor, talk to nurses, right? Don't believe what you're hearing, or whatever. But because it's really, to me, it just seems like we're tearing each other apart. We've become very sarcastic society somehow, a kind of a hardened society, and I don't know where that started and why. But that's going to make it hard for us. That's going to make it very hard for us if we can't turn that around a little bit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've enjoyed our time. We do a thing called rapid fire questioning here. Are you ready?
No.
No? I promise it will be short.
I can always just fake that I had my internet cut off, right?
There you go. You just stand still. Just sit still.
Freeze up. All right.
Okay, are you ready now?
I'm ready now. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Okay. So the first question, favorite food?
Oh, my goodness. Italian food. I love spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Favorite? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I love it. It's also one of my best dishes that I cook.
Oh.
Second to barbecue, I have a smoker, so that's close. So.
Okay, so we need to clarify this because we have viewers that view in from all over. When you talk about barbecue.
No question, Eastern Carolina, vinegar based with
all right.
Hush puppies. Okay. Hush puppies.
My man.
There's only one way.
There you go. Favorite ice cream?
Oh, this is so boring. I like floats. So vanilla and cola.
That's a little fancy.
Listen, I didn't say what kind of cola it was. We've got Fanta and, you know, Sam's Club brand, right? You know.
Gotcha. Favorite movie?
First movie I ever saw, I think, Star Wars.
What was it about Star Wars?
Well, I think just it was the first movie I saw, and just the story, and the you know, what the future could look like, I guess. Hopefully some parts, no, we don't need like some empire running around, but just the space travel and the adventure. A close second would be Indiana Jones. So I think it must be the adventure and discovery of things that I really like.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Favorite hobby?
I love to cook. I am the cook in the house. My wife's probably watching and she'll admit, like when I used to go out of town a lot, it was a lot of cereal. When I come back in town, I don't play. I love to cook. It's my stress reliever.
Nice. So is it that when you're in the kitchen, they can't be in the kitchen?
They can be there. They've learned don't ask if I need help because
Uh-huh.
it is my stress reliever. You know, it's the preparing, the this, the that. So whenever people come over, they're like, "Hey, can I help?" Now most of them know, don't ask. I'm in my zone.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. A favorite meal you love to cook for the family?
It would have to be that barbecue. I just cook a mean barbecue, and I do it with all the trimmings, Brunswick stew, you know, you name it. I got cast iron, so I do cast iron baked, smoked mac and cheese. I'm telling you, I don't play around. That's what I like to cook when I have family and friends over.
So you let me know when that happens again, and you just
Yep.
leave mine on the porch. I know
Hey,
we're in COVID situation. It's okay. Just
I'll
call
drop
me.
some off. I'll drop some off.
There you go. Favorite vacation or destination spot?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know if I can pinpoint a place because each one's so incredibly unique. And like I said, I've been all over the world. Our first big family vacation, we went to Rome. We went and traveled around there. That was incredibly memorable. We had some other places that we wanted to go afterwards, but crazy me decided to go start my own company and then this virus hit. So that's not happening. But honestly, our dream, our goal is to, we used to have a trailer and we would just go take it, and we lived in the mountains at the time, and we would just go camping. Our goal is to do something like that again here soon, and just get away and be
Yeah.
out in nature.
Nice. Nice. Well, that's the end of the rapid fire. It wasn't too bad, was it? But it goes to, I do those because it goes to what we talked about earlier, that if you meet the person at the human level first, and a lot of times we don't take time to learn those things about people, and they become common places to have conversation.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. That was
Absolutely.
fun.
So we're at the end now, okay? I'm finally going to let you go. I don't know.
Okay.
I may have to bring you back another day. I've so enjoyed myself. I know you're coming back on Saturday, so I guess I'll hold you hostage a little bit more on Saturday with the other guys. But
Well, and just to share with your listeners, I am going to be interviewing you, CK,
yes,
because you have a really cool story and the law enforcement background with everything that we have going on right now. Like I said, I tell people to go to the root, right? And explore. Don't listen to what you're being fed. Feed yourself. So I want to know what it's like to be in law enforcement, person of color, and what you're seeing today.
yeah.
And so you're on the hook. We are definitely going to be talking again.
I love it. I'll take the hot seat. I'll take it. I definitely will take it. Yes. I am going to put myself on mute at the end of every episode. What we like to do is give you the platform. It's been your platform all day, but just I'm quiet. I put myself on mute so I can't even interrupt, to let you say whatever it is you need to say to whoever it is you need to say it to. You ready?
Okay. Yeah, I am. And then I'm gone after that, right? You're kicking me out?
And you can stay as long as you want to. Yeah, but yeah, we'll talk, and then just hold on the line.
Okay.
All right. It's
All right.
yours.
Okay. Well, so first of all, I do want to say thank you, CK, for giving me this opportunity to share the story. I really enjoyed our conversation. Don't know where it's going, and that was the most fun piece of it. It's just exploring together. I guess what I would just say for people is, we are in dynamic times right now. We're dealing with a pandemic with unknown variables. We are, dealing with, a lot of political things going on right now. We're dealing with what's going on in society. That's a lot, not only for our society, but that's a lot for a human being. I guess what I would just say is, have some empathy. Don't react with that lizard brain. Don't react immediately and think, why am I seeing this? Why am I those people? Take a step back, try to look one step beyond and think, why are things happening? Be open-minded, challenge yourself. When you have that unconscious bias well up and become conscious and come spewing out, like I have, like everybody has. Challenge yourself, and ultimately get yourself, if you can, in a place where you have that understanding, you have that empathy, and you can get to that point where you can stand up for people that need help and that need people standing up and advocating for them. And when we can do that as a society, then we're going to be unstoppable. And that's where I want to see us go. So just keep an open mind and be supportive. You don't have to agree, but understand, seek to understand, and take the time to understand, and take the time to listen. And if you have a story, take the time to share it, because people do want to listen right now. I know that firsthand. I get messages all week long from people that just want to talk. So I'm honored by that, and we'll get there together.
Thank you, Mr. Jay Graves. You are amazing.
It's my pleasure.
And I am honored and humbled that you agreed to come and speak and tell your story. I'm thankful that you came and told your story. And I can't wait. I know we already talked about it. This isn't the last time we're going to be together. So I'm looking forward to the next time.
Sounds good, CK.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Now, you're welcome. Absolutely. To our viewers, I want to say thank you so much for listening as Jay Graves told his story through his lens. Now, he talked about something earlier that maybe happened to you, and that was some type of flag that went up as you heard some of his stories through his lens that may never have happened before, or a flag that has happened and been there a while, and you just kind of ignored it and kept going, because that would be going against the grain or going against what all the other things that you've learned in life. I'm asking you today, this is your time to take part in the Voices of a Black Man by taking action in your own life. That's it. Just searching out your biases, whether they're known or unknown, and taking actions towards them, going to the source, learning more, asking questions, and challenging some of the things that you feel that aren't quite right, even though everyone else around you is telling you, oh, they're fine, they're okay. That's all I'm asking you to do. Because if each of us first check ourselves and start changing our own biases, then we can then affect our families, our communities, and then the world. That's simply how it works. I'm CK James. Thank you for being a part of the Voices of a Black Man today. I'll tell you that if you want to learn more, you want to hear more speakers, go to www.voicesofablackman.com. If you want to be a speaker, go back to that same website as well. If you want to leave a comment, to that website as well, www.voicesofablackman.com. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same time, 12 p.m. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye.